Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. William Woods and the Faculty Council Co-Chair. I will be your host for this session, leveraging artificial intelligence to drive authentic discussion. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but I encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, keep your eye on the chat for a link to a helpful session feedback survey. Now I'm pleased to introduce to you Debbie Hailwood, Dr. Amy Johnson, and also Devyn Maquire from Packback. There we go.
You get it all the time, William. You're fine.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you everyone for joining us. We're really excited to be presenting today and to introduce you to this innovative approach to discussions. But first, let's introduce ourselves. And I know that Devyn is getting our presentation up right now. I'm Debbie Hailwood. I'm a full-time faculty member in the Education Studies program in the College of Arts and Science. And I'm Zooming to you today from just outside of San Diego. So if you know the area, I'm in Oceanside to be exact. And we're all gonna share a little fun fact about ourselves. So I guess a fun fact about me is that I have this little fur baby. Her name is Scout. She's my sweet little dog. And if you're ever in a presentation with me or in a meeting with me, she's always sitting or sleeping on this couch behind me. So I'm not here by myself. I always have my little dog and she's hanging out right there. And there we go. There's our slide. And there she is on that in the picture too. So she's always supervising, making sure I'm doing my work. Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Johnson, and I'm an associate professor in the Early Childhood Education Department at Ashford University. I live near Fort Worth, Texas with my husband and 2 daughters. And a fun fact about me is that I have bionic ear parts, and without my fake stapes, I would be deaf.
We're glad you're not, Amy. Hi, everyone. My name is Devyn Maquire. I serve as an academic innovation consultant here at Packback. I'm actually coming from elementary education myself, so it's been an honor working with the Ashford Education Program team. I recently relocated to Denver due to COVID and remote working from Chicago, where we're usually located. And my fun fact is my mom actually received her special education master's at Ashford and speaks very highly of everyone, which now I know why. So it's a pleasure to be here today.
Awesome, thank you. So before we get started, we want to hear from you. So we have a couple of questions to ask you. So the first is, what does an ideal online class discussion look like to you? And then think about what the challenges are that you've observed when trying to reach that ideal. So take a minute, share your thoughts with us in the chat. I lost the chat. So I see Alan, thank you for sharing, for being the first one to share with us. A high level of back and forth. Is that the ideal? Yeah. Is that what's the challenge for that? Kathleen talks about the lack of shared understanding between the question developer and the instructor. I think that's a good point. Susan shares the ideal is something that has gray areas, not a pure right or wrong answer. Thank you, Alan. Yes, that is the ideal. No hard feelings. What are some of the challenges that you've observed when trying to reach the ideal? Kathleen says an ideal is a discussion that does not elicit a standard response. Yeah, I agree with you on that one, Kathleen. Yvonne, tech limitations, absolutely. Maybe even time limitations. I know that sometimes it can be very difficult when it's so asynchronous that you're wanting to get the student to answer you quickly before the end of the week, right? Susan mentions the week's learning outcomes don't have a gray area. That week's learning outcomes don't have a gray area. Z says students aren't responding. Absolutely. limited student engagement, no enthusiasm, can be very rote. These are all really, really great responses, and I think we all can probably agree with these and have experienced these as well. So.
If you had to take a stab at why a student might post something like this, what do you think? Think about what's driving this kind of response. So teaching a class that you've not created does have frustrations. If the discussion board is not clear to you as the teacher, it's certainly not clear to the students. Let's say as a teacher, your typical expectation is that a post is 300 words. Now, what if a student's post is only 75 words, but you don't see any areas that require further elaboration? The student has answered the prompt in the details it requires, but it wasn't a well-written prompt. So what do you do? Or sometimes the prompt asks a simple one answer only question. The students all post the same exact thing because really that's the only answer. And their peer replies are shallow because the prompt lends itself to shallow replies. For instance, if the prompt asked, would you rather eat dirt or bread? The vast majority of the students would obviously choose bread. They answer bread. Now what's the peer response? You like bread? Me too. What if the response guidelines ask the student to respond to someone who chose a different answer, but there is no one who chose a different answer? Of course, this is very simplistic, but you see the point. A prompt that is not well written is frustrating for everyone involved. I've also taught classes where I have written the prompt, and I have to tell you, no matter how much time and thought I put into that prompt, there are bound to be some issues. A prompt simply cannot be perfect and all-encompassing. So let's talk about the intention of our discussions versus the reality of discussions. In our current discussions, faculty use the speed grader rubric to demonstrate student achievement. The grade comes at the end of the week after all the work has been submitted. Now, throughout the week, the instructor replies to student posts. The instructor may include areas in which the student excelled, ask further thinking questions, correct any misinformation in the post, provide additional real-world examples, or ask for clarification. If a student's missing a portion, they have the opportunity to add more detail when implementing the instructor's suggestions. For instance, the intention behind discussions played out well with one of my recent students. After replying to her post and providing her with a relevant research study and video clip, she responded, "This is such a great video. Thank you for sharing it with me. It truly amazes me how the newborn baby was able to react to their native language over other languages. I look forward to sharing this video with my coworkers who work in the infant room." But the reality is that many students do not reply back to the instructor. I ask a question, provide additional resources, ask for clarification, etc., and there's no student reply. In a face-to-face classroom, there would absolutely be a reply. The end result is that the teacher spends hours each week trying to create a back and forth discussion, sharing resources and stretching student thinking. The instructor strives for all students to reach the ideal post and grade. Students may or may not keep that conversation going. At the end of the week, the instructor grades the overall work that was completed.
Thank you. So Amy shared some of the intentions of online threaded discussion boards, which is what we have in Canvas. We all know that there are also many limitations. So you shared a few already. When instructors are replying to students in the discussions, we want our responses to be supportive, but also guide the students if they're off base. So Amy reminds us that part of our role as instructors when we're replying to students in the discussions is to correct any misinformation in the student's initial post. Realistically, it can be tough to do that with every student in every discussion. So something else to think about is that we're spending a lot of time during the week and then again after the week is over. So we have to ask, what's the best way to use our instructional time effectively, right? And there's no doubt that discussion can be a powerful component of learning in an online classroom. But if the discussions aren't working, then what? So that's why we want to talk to you a little bit about how we've partnered with Packback to help us innovate the discussions. So over the summer, faculty from EDU 100 and ECE 101 worked with Packback to bring their AI-supported technology into Canvas with the intention of piloting a student-driven approach to discussions as an alternative to the typical threaded discussion forums. So Devyn's going to go into what the platform looks like in a minute, but picture this. So rather than the typical way we've always done discussions, so students engage with resources, everyone answers the same discussion prompt and then responds to two peers, here we're removing the threaded discussion and replacing it with Packback. And with the Packback platform, it encourages students to ask their own questions to the class about the resources they've engaged with, and then answer each other's questions. So rather than the course developers writing the prompts, the students are asking the questions and leading their own learning. And then Packback's instant feedback, Devyn, we can go to the next slide. Packback's instant feedback feature, so this is what it actually, Packback will look like. Their instant feedback feature gives students actionable feedback on their writing and inquiry formation as they type. So I like to think of this as an inquiry-based Grammarly, if you will. We're all familiar with Grammarly. We all understand how it gives, it kind of spits out in the moment feedback. So I love this like just-in-time feedback from Grammarly, and now it's, you know, we're using that for Packback because it allows students the opportunity to adjust their work as needed and learn from and apply that feedback in that moment in order to craft their best question or best answer in that moment. So it's not punitive feedback. It's just that it's a non-punitive feedback loop that encourages growth. So I'm gonna let Devyn talk a little bit more about Packback itself.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks, Debbie. Perfectly put. So really what we spend a lot of time thinking about here at Packback is if we were to take away the structures that were intentionally put into place to drive meaningful and authentic discussion, but have just fallen short, and were to take those same principles and provide them in real time to students, so really what would have existed in the rubric to front load that for a student, what would be the net result? And the theoretical components of Packback that we rest all of the ways that we think about building our features and the technology itself is driven by a true pedagogy. So a lot of the work that I've been doing with the education teams is not just in, well, let's put this tool in, but let's really think about the approach to instruction and how can we support our students to be able to engage in these more meaningful discussions. We rest what we do again on educational theory. I've been pleasantly surprised as I've been sitting in on the conference today, because a lot of what the other sessions are talking about is what we have developed and researched and are pretty obsessed with. So it's been really inspiring to hear everyone else's work too. The one theory that I want to focus on just for the purpose of today and with the interest of time is self-determination theory. This one actually comes out of the University of Rochester in the 1980s. It was developed by Debby and Ryan. And what they researched to understand was really the science of intrinsic motivation, which is what compels someone to complete something for the love of the action itself, rather than the reward of the action, which in this case would be a grade or checking off a course from your program list. What they came to understand was that for that to occur, these three things in front of you need to be in alignment. The first one, of course, being purpose of how relevant is this experience to me and my greater goals. The second being autonomy of how much agency and ownership do I have over my learning environment. And the final piece being mastery, which is that competency piece, which we spend a lot of time as educators and designers in creating it in the form of assessments for our courses. And we know that a strong faculty member and an impactful educator does their best to keep these three things in alignment, which is very difficult to do in an asynchronous environment, especially at scale. Packback was built to be that component that keeps them in alignment, especially at scale. And we do that with the understanding that more interaction from the instructor is not necessarily a good thing. And by more, I mean a volume of interaction. Instead, we want really quality and impactful interactions that also optimize the time of the faculty member. The next piece being that by students asking their own questions, we're able to see far stronger course outcomes. Packback actually has conducted a national study on the efficacy of this framework, which will soon be published in the online learning journal. Our work with Ashford and other fully online organizations is to continue that research and understanding. So with all of that, I'm going to take us into demonstrating what this looks like in practice in an Ashford course. But before I do, it's also worth noting that Packback is set to serve as a digital TA. So again, to Debbie's point, similar to Grammarly, it's like a Grammarly for your critical thought. So coaching students to reach those higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So what it looks like in practice from the pilot within the actual design of EDU 100, and we did a similar design within ECE 101 as well. So is what was historically here, you would have seen multiple threaded discussion options. So there's 2 to 3 discussion threads, and Debbie, feel free to pop in and explain this part with me. But what we did was we took those out and then took the materials that would have helped to drive those discussion threads before and put it in the form of a front-loaded guidance. So as students are thinking about what they're going to publish in Packback for the week, they have all of the support here to help them in how to be successful, since this is, of course, a new approach for them. There's guidance built in from a content standpoint that helps to spark their own curiosity. And we encourage our students to get in and post their question during the week at the time where they feel most confident in doing so, but we want them to get in and engage early and engage often. So a student might get in and engage in the form of a response on day 1 of the week, but they might wait until day 2 or 3 to actually submit their own question, which is okay, because as you'll see in the feed itself, once I get in, it is a running component where there's always something to interact with. Students from Ashford would actually launch Packback from within the course. So it actually grabs their password and account. They don't need to make anything new. With Packback, they're automatically pushed right in. It opens in a new tab, but they're still signed into Canvas. For the purpose of our presentation, since this course is not launched yet with Packback in it, I'm going to show you a different Packback community just to show you how the technology works. But please feel free to put any questions within the chat as we go through as well. So this is the Packback community itself. So this is actually an example of a course out of Penn State's World Campus that uses Packback. This course is an upper level communications course, and it has the same social media like look and feel that all of our communities have, and we like to say with an academic backbone. As I'm going through the feed here, but you'll notice the big twist that we take, as we've all been stating, is that students are the ones driving the questions. So they are the ones that are submitting a question every single week, which is a highly purposeful activity to their own determination and intrinsic motivation. They have the autonomy to engage with any of the posts that stand out to them, but they need to engage within a minimum requirement, which in this course would have been 2 posts at minimum throughout the week. What we found is that by setting those student expectations up of posting 1 question and responding to 2 of their peers, is that students often persist and engage beyond those requirements because there's the safety within, I've done what is needed of me, I've earned my grade, I'm successful, and now I can use this as my community and my space to learn. The result of this is what we see are strong student-created questions that bring in a description that ties together the real world, how that applies to their content, and also their own personal experiences within the space, which again helps it to be a learning experience that is relevant to their greater goals. So within this student-created question that they formulated, they went on to expand their thinking. They brought in source material. Professor Kennan praised this post in the form of public praise, so this feedback is available for the rest of the students to see and learn from as well. And then the responses are threaded underneath that question. So these are all student-developed responses. Students also have the opportunity to provide a support or counterpoint, and you'll see varying lengths of responses because, again, many students will have already hit their expectation of a lengthier response and go into continue engaging throughout the week. This is a form of that supporting point that I was addressing. I'm going to just pause here, and then I'm going to demonstrate what it looks like in real time when that Grammarly component is running. But it's also worth noting what's happening in the background is that as students are developing their posts, we're watching and tracking for things such as plagiarism, both internal and external. So a student can't go and take a post that was developed by a different student and play it off as their own, or grab something from the World Wide Web and pass it off as their own either. We also account for profanity or abusive language. So I saw in another session today the conversation around it's difficult to have controversial discussions. So to help in facilitating those controversial topics and keep it more academically focused, we will help to coach students again in a non-punitive way of you did use a profane or abusive language that is outside of the context of this course, please take a moment to revise your post and resubmit if you'd like to keep your credit for the week. So what Packback does is offset a lot of the administrative burden tasks that you might be doing now as a faculty member so that your time can be targeted purely on the content of what they're saying. And that's demonstrated right here for you to see of how this loop works. So as the students are submitting their posts, again, in the background, that moderation is occurring. They receive coaching and they have the opportunity to revise and resubmit before the weekly deadline, which is available for their viewing at any point for their activity as well. That allows the instructor's time to be pointed very much so at, again, the content of the course. So as a facilitator of discussion, what Amy and Debbie would be doing in their courses is each week looking through and highlighting work that is really hitting the mark of what they want to see from a content perspective, also pulling up those middle of the road students that might not be the top of the class, but they're also not struggling and they sometimes get overlooked. This is a great way to highlight their work and to help them to persist and go beyond their typical engagement. The other area that we encourage our faculty members to take place in, and that we've worked with the team to determine the best optimization of an Ashford faculty member's time, is in the form of public praise and private feedback, which lives within the Packback platform. So again, throughout the week, you're able to go in and give this feedback to students, which then drives more meaningful engagement. Any of the posts that you select to be really reaching those higher levels that you'd like to see actually get sent in the form of a newsletter every Friday to the entire class. So it keeps this positive reinforcement loop running, something that we would traditionally do in a face-to-face classroom to drive, again, that community and connection.
The AI feature provides instant feedback to students in lieu of the instructor needing to provide it, just as Devyn was talking about. This frees up the instructor to engage in a higher level rather than kind of policing the discussion forum. It allows faculty to direct their time during the week and provide interventions, guidance, or coaching, enabling real-time feedback during the learning rather than waiting to provide a summative assessment on the back end. So time is really optimized and impactful here.
And what we'd like to do is wrap up with a check-in with everyone. Again, this is the intention of this pilot is to pilot as soon as we can and to start actually drawing some data insights on the impact that it has for Ashford. So there will be a research component as we move forward. But we'd like to hear from you either in the chat or, since we do have a couple of minutes left, if anyone would like to pop up with what is sticking with you, what's standing out, and then what questions do you have for us? I love a good wait time. Brings me back.
The teacher wait time, absolutely. I will say that for, I mentioned this earlier in the chat because Charles did ask, and so I'll just kind of mention it again. This is not yet available to every faculty. I know if you're looking at like maybe you're revising a course and you're thinking, hey, I want to use this. We're not quite there yet. We've had we've had to kind of put a little stop on our pilot just because of all the transition to University of Arizona Global Campus. And so we're looking to roll this pilot out in early 2021, but we were really excited to share this with you. So we wanted to take this opportunity at TLC to kind of get the word out of how exciting this alternative to discussions is.
And I'll also add, and then Charles, I know you have a question, that in transitioning towards this instructional approach, we actually have an entire team that's dedicated to training and support. So you are equipped with a human that is accessible to you to help you with this pedagogical shift. That's a big part of what we do here as well. So go ahead, Charles.
Oh, I was just going to answer your question on, in terms of what's sticking with me. I like the aspect of it seems to promote more engaged discussion, and the aspect of, like you said, kind of the punitive or the administrative stuff is taking a little bit off our plate so that we can see. And I really like the fact that each student kind of has a unique avatar and a space where they can kind of be themselves and ask a question. It's bolded. I think a lot of those things would be able to be nicely integrated into our future classrooms.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree that too. And I also, as an instructor, when this platform was being introduced to us, one of the other things that stuck out to me was this idea of something called a curiosity score. So as a student is creating their questions and putting, explaining their question or why they've asked this question, and giving, of course, their resources, they earn these curiosity points, which right off the bat, that sounds like fun. I want to collect curiosity points, right? Throughout my day, I want curiosity points. But the fun thing about that, of course, it kind of gamifies it. We've got the social network aspect of it, but also immediately gives students some kind of feedback. It's not just a bunch of words that spit at them. It's also some kind of numerical value. It's not points that they're given in terms of like your grade, but it gives them this opportunity to say, okay, I'm not there yet. If the threshold is, I need to get, I don't know, random number, 50 points for this to be a submittable Packback question, then I know if I'm at 40, I'm not there yet. So I can adjust it before I get to that point. And I really think that is another way to give students that intrinsic opportunity. I also really like the templated aspect of this, rather than just having a blank threaded discussion box. It gives them prompts along the way and it has them think through it. So that way the student, especially if it's a newer student, the student isn't thinking, okay, I have to create something out of nothing. It kind of gives them that structure as well.